And then from that point, I just started to smuggle a prolific amount of drugs. There's a price to pay. It's when does that price come to be paid? And then that was basically the road to hell. They opened it, half a ton of cocaine fell out on them. So this was me. I wanted to get back in the music industry, and I thought, okay, I like the idea of the festival, but I'll go along with the potential move. Let's see what can be done. Anyway, we flew down to Jamaica, and it was quite funny because I'll never forget it. They flew down, and me and my business partner at the time, we flew down there. We booked into the Wyndham Hotel. An English cricket team were down there as well at the same time. They were going to play the West Indies.
What year was that?
About 97, 96.
That was when both of them got caught puffing, wasn't it?
No, that come after. This was when the whole test match got called off because the cricket pitch, they'd just recently laid it, and what happened was basically it was unsafe, you know. That day they came out battered and bruised, all the English cricket team, because the ball was taken off. It was taken off, yeah. Anyway, we went out there basically, and again, a member of my extended family. So, you know, the guys were like, yeah, they got a contact out there that's going to get them the material and all they needed to put on. So what I'd done was we had money to do the move, and basically a guy flew it up all £50 notes. And I thought, okay, we're going to have to get this now brought into US dollars because that's how this product's sold down now. So I'd contacted a member of my extended family who used to run what they call the illegal money market, illegal bank used to call it, you know. They had contacts with lots of the main players, so they would convert the money, currency exchange, a lot of money in there was, you know. Anyway, he came into the hotel and met us, and basically, you know, said not a problem, he'll arrange to get the dollars, but he was concerned because he just thought, you're naive, you don't know what you're doing, and this is going to end up badly. So he came back, he had all the money, he said, listen, he said, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, you need to go and speak to, you know, someone, another member of our extended family who I went to see, who'd been an experienced smuggler for many, many years, and he was like a mentor to me, he became a mentor to me, really. My mum and dad had known him, you know, back from the 50s throughout. He went back to Jamaica in the 70s to live. He had a close shave here, but he became incredibly powerful. You know, there he's become a huge smuggler from Colombia and the Caribbean into the States. Not cocaine, but weed at that time used to come out of Colombia. Colombian gold.
Yeah, it's really good apparently.
That's what it was, yeah. And he had boats basically that he used to run through, you know, into Miami, across the States, and had a complete network, you know. Anyway, I went and saw him. He had a casino, gambling house, and told him what was planning. And with one step, he said, wait a minute. He walked into another room where the gambling tables, brought a guy back in and said, look, this is what they want to do. And the guy was like, it's impossible, we can't put it in a specific part of this plane. It doesn't work. So I was like, okay. He walked out and said, who's he? He said, he's head of security at the airport. Right? So I was like, okay, we're in the right direction. And he just called me and said, listen, he said, what you're trying to do is madness, right? If you want to learn this game, I'll teach you, you know, and if you want to do it, you'll do it successfully, and I'll take you under my wing. So that was the door that was going to open, and that would change my life eventually.
Not just yours, though.
Not just mine. Not just mine.
Fucking hell.
Not just mine. And we came back to England. That particular festival flopped. It didn't even happen, actually. But a group of us, you know, had a friendship. And I thought, I actually want to do an event. I really want to do an event. I want to do a festival, got the flavour for this. And I thought, the same member of my extended family was the person who done Sunsplash. So we went back up to Jamaica and said to him, you know, what's the chances of us being able to bring it back to England? Because the last one was in 87 after that steaming event. So I said, well, you know, it ended like that. The partners don't really talk anymore, but you never know, anything's possible. So, you know, I wore him down, and said, listen, if we pay for you to come to London, we'll sit down, let's see what we can do, no obligation, let's try to bring it forward. Anyway, he agreed to come down, he came down, he called David Rodigan, David was part of the early thing. Spoke to David was like, it's possible, it's the greatest thing in the world, best film we've been involved in, you know, is it capable? So look, we could definitely do it. We've got the finance, we've got the availability, it can work. And we went for a tedious process now of bringing Sunsplash back to the UK. That became a mission because obviously we were talking to partners, ex-partners who were all over the world who'd fallen out. We managed to coax that forward, and then eventually, after a big legal battle, we fronted it and we got Victoria Park to do the event. So
What year was that one?
1999, turn of millennium. That was the 21st birthday of Reggae Sunsplash as well, the anniversary of it. So we got the park. We had meetings every week with the chief police and the fire brigade and the ambulance brigade, and we were doing all the logistics and we were going through the whole thing, and we were putting this event. Well, like anything, it was sod's law. So during that outburst, you had a series of yardie murders just flaring up and taking off, and basically there's about 13 odd shootings in Holston around those areas. So the police were like, this event can't go on. You're talking about having 40,000 people. It's going to be a bloodbath. They want to come here and slaughter each other.
See, that was the
height of it.
Yeah, I got
height
loads
of
of them as
that
well.
was the height of it. All the shootings was going on.
What was that from?
It was just
loads of. I got labelled a yardie hitman.
It was madness.
And I wasn't even a yardie. It was just anything to do with gunplay and that. In I'd say from 97 to 2002, 2004, it just went nuts. Do you know what I mean? And I lost a lot of friends during that time. And a lot of us got a lot of bird. A lot of people got nicked and banged.
Yep, and it was chaos. It was chaos anyway.
Chaos.
So the police, the police were saying you can't have an event of this size. How can you have an event of this size? There's no control over it. Anyway, following week, even glimmer news. Some lunatic starts creating nail bombs.
Yeah.
So he does one in Brick Lane, he does one in Brixton, he does one in Soho, and he's killing people basically. If they're black, if they're gay, whatever they are, he's killing you if you don't fit his remit. So now we've got a festival for dominantly black people in Victoria Park. You've got a nail bomber flying around the place in one side, then you've got yardies going around shooting each other on the other side. So for the nail bomber, there's nothing we can do about him, but we can probably do something about the yardie scenario. So I went back to the table with extended family and elders. I said, look, is there anything we can do to calm this down? They said, yeah, there is something we can do. We can talk to people up here. So certain gangs that were affiliated in England were actually very dominant in Jamaica, and their key members were down here and dominant.
That was a shower lot, wasn't it?
There was a variation, you know. You had Klansmen, it was deadly as hell. Shower, do you know what I mean? You had
the shower, like when they were predominantly East London, North London.
Shower were from Tivoli Gardens.
I like that.
And you had
they represented over here.
Yeah,
Bargy and Troy and them, like, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, much more senior guys were over here, and you know you had different. I mean, these were serious gangs as well, you know, because Bone Crusher, these kind of guys were dangerous gangs out of Portmore, Spanish Town, Tivoli, you know, Matches Lane. Anyway, some of the main guys who were the real, you know, thing agreed to call it, keep it cool, and they did. The nail bomber got arrested a week before the event, which was sheer miracle, and the event went on. Staged the event. We had, you know, close to 40,000 people. It was a huge event. It swelled. There was no real problems there, but we'd massively overspent in the production. Yeah, well, basically we'd made a huge mistake in the ticketing. We had a hole in what we were doing, and we had a team of security we had three sets of security, but one particular set of security found a way of recycling the tickets. So they had had been reselling the tickets from early doors, so they were basically accumulating a third of our ticket sales. And the event happened, and then sadly, after the event, and literally in a window of maybe 1 month, which was the critical time to recover, because we could have recovered and it could have been a massive event because we would have had massive sponsors coming in place. It would have been an annual festival. I had an incident. A vehicle had been brought to my house. It was sitting on my drive, and that morning, never forget it, and I'll never forget it today. Got a knock at the door, opened the door, 3 police pushed themselves through the door, and then they said, we've got a warrant to search the house. What car ringing racket? Turned out someone that was coming to the office, he'd been on surveillance, he'd been ringing cars, and we give him a couple of cars sent to Jamaica. Legitimately, he stripped them down. They were on a container. They came in, jackpot. It's like, right, okay. Got taken in, analysed the pills, they bailed me. Anyway, I was sitting down thinking, I can't fucking believe this. Life just can't get any worse. And
that's what you think.
I just thought life can't get any worse, right? Anyway,
oh dear.
Bail date come basically now to be rebailed. When the rebail date came, I thought, okay, going to go to the rebail. What happens is they put it back, say no, we're going to get in contact with you for another date. So I thought, winter's coming, Christmas is coming. Got 2 choices here: sit in a prison cell in England, or Jamaica where I come.
Easy choice.
So I flew again,
Yep.
and that was it. They said, look, you're down here in Jamaica, you've got every contact in the world, let's go to work. So I thought, why not? And then from that point, I just started to smuggle a prolific amount of drugs.
No cigars.
No cigars. And it just became that fun. I was introduced to a guy called Black Adooch, who was a Don, who controlled a section of downtown West Kingston, which was known as Jungle. Amazing guy, you know, serious little guy and stuff, but he was very broadly spoken, but he was a serious guy and great contacts at the Wolf. So he became one of my business partners in smuggling, and we literally just imported tons of weed, you know, every way but
what was
loose.
It? Sensi, or was it?
Well, there are people
stuff?
talk about Sensimelia, which is seedless weed, but there are variations of weed. You know, there are different qualities of weed, you know, depending on what part of the island it comes from. But it was all of a very high standard, called high grade. So it sells for a amount of money. So the position I found myself in, we were buying weed at £50 a pound in weight,
Yeah.
and it was selling down there for £2,600 a pound. Yeah. So it became an incredibly...
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so it became an incredible commodity to deal with. Anyway, we basically, you know, opened the windows up completely, and we were able basically to just had great contacts here, and it was a question of literally sending boxes, containers, cases, but people, everything we could imagine. We were flying through the airports, through the wharfs, and we were literally just flooding the place. And as he said, at that time, everyone knew where I was, who I was, and what I was doing. But I was pretty...
You were ringing.
Yeah.
Ringing.
But I was pretty safe where I was. I couldn't be touched. I had political connections. I was good to go. And we had...
Mad, isn't it? How all that ripples back here, though.
Yeah.
Everyone that he knew, and then everyone they knew.
Yeah.
Probably,
Everyone was talking about it.
yeah, well, probably, and everyone was getting work, and it was like...
That's what it was, yeah. It was.
Nuts, mate. I'm telling you, that was a period of my life where I see so many of my friends hit rock bottom. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know when people grafting, right? And this is obviously the ripple effects of that lifestyle, right? Because it's like one of my pals, who was like a conduit to you and everybody else. He just got caught up in it. Got caught up in it bad, mate. And he started taking gear, went off the rails.
Most people do.
It's just, it's
like
just...
You two are the lucky stories.
No, but I had it. I had it.
There is no lucky story.
There's
a price. There's a price to pay. It's when does that price come to be paid? You know, and to this point, the price hasn't come yet.
What?
And the price hadn't come. What I'd had, I had a few close shaves, and there was no real. I hadn't really had the fall yet. What had happened was I was still riding high. I was riding higher and higher. I didn't see anything wrong with what I was doing, and I felt almost invincible. As people do.
The chat back here though, you was untouchable, bro.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You was where you need
That's
to
what it
be.
was. I was untouchable.
Do you know what I mean?
And I believed it.
whatever you
And
wanted.
I believed it. And I really believed it.
Pretty
Yeah.
were untouchable. It sounds like at that time.
Well, I thought I was, but no one is.
What I'm saying is, you always think more than that. It's that you think outside of the reality perception of like normality.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because you was living that life, and you're not looking at reality. You're just caught up in figures and results and logistics, and nothing else matters. Figures, results, logistics. Oh, let's do that. Oh, got that. Yeah, got that. Oh, got that. And you're not looking at the ripple effects, the devastation you're causing,
People's
the attention.
families,
Yeah,
what it's doing to
people actually
people.
talking about what you're doing.
It's hard to appreciate when you're actually committing the crime at that time.
No,
Then
because
look at the ripple effects you don't.
That's
you are
exactly
literally
right.
looking at
Because it's greed
what
and
you need to-
stupidity.
Yeah.
Well, it's distracted. So, how did things change? It sounded like you were...
So basically things, as I said, we were excelling further and further and further, becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it was in, God, I can't remember the year now. It must have been about 2000, and if I'm right, it could be, it might have been, God, I can't remember what the year he died. Anyway. Blacker, basically, I was off the island. I used to travel a lot.
So you must be a very wealthy guy by this time.
Yeah, a lot of money we had. And the thing was, it was just mountain and mountain and mountain. So I'd entered into real estate in Jamaica. We were involved in property deals, building social housing, I mean, properties by the hundred,
Jesus.
One development was nearly 700 properties. So we were there. Anyway, got a phone call. I was off the island. Said Blacker. So Blacker said Blacker's dead. So I was like, "How's Blacker dead?" Anyway, it turned out that Blacker had went to meet another guy we knew, Willie Huggett. He turned up at Maxfield Avenue that day. They was talking in the corner. Car drove down that alley. White car, looked like a plainclothes police car. 3 guys got out, white shirts. Blacker thought they police, pulled his gun to show him his licensed firearm. They drew out AK-47s and just showered them with bullets. Killed 4 men. And then went over and repeatedly put bullets into them. Anyway, I would have been there. I could have been there. I would have been there had I been on the island, because that was a normal routine. We would go to these places.
That meant your life was in danger at that point.
I would have been dead as well.
Yeah.
So I had to find out what happened, what was the reaction to it. Was Blacker? It was a target. Many things were said. People said Willie was a target because Willie had a lot of history with the Colombians, and there was an incident that supposedly happened there involving his sister, and apparently she had been involved in something where some Colombians were robbed, and she subsequently got what they call a Colombian necktie. Sometime later, where they cut her throat and pulled her tongue through Adam's apple. Willie was almost untouchable because the robbery apparently they'd done from the Colombians was like tens of millions of dollars that they stole from him. So he had a strong army around him, but the Colombians are cartels, it's a different level. So what it meant was how they done the murder and left without the car looking like a trees grater, because there's some serious guns in those garrisons. So for the try to drive and do it and leave, there was something more to it. So what the idea was, everyone had police they paid, so did Willie. So Willie probably would have got a call to say, get the guns out of the garrison because the police are coming in for a raid, from a reasonably high ranking police officer. But the Colombians would have had a higher ranking police officer who would have given false intelligence down the line to say a raid was going on. So his guy would get the information, clear out the guns, send in the hitman, take them out and leave. And that's what it was. And that's the level that was being played at.
And you know that over there, because over there it's not like, you can't just drive in the manor and
you can't do it. You're going to choose great. They fill it with bullets. It'd be full with bullets.
Even like 2000, what was it? 2000, when was I over there? 2018. 2018 I was in Jamaica. Yeah. And you still, like, can't go to an area if you're not known and walk about with your phone or take pictures and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Like everything, like they've got craters in the like Tivoli Garden, especially.
Yeah,
they've got craters in
speed
the
bumps.
Like they're not speed
Massive
bumps, but
like
they
that.
put crates in the thing,
Yeah.
and then they pile up things. So when you drive in, you got to drive in.
That's right.
You got
Yeah.
like it's not like
You can't make a clean run.
Yeah, you can't just make one straight drive up to the end of the street. It doesn't work like that. It's just there's barricades.
Yes,
it's
there's no
deep.
chance that it could have happened.
No,
without
there's no way. That's what I'm saying. There's no way that could have happened, and that geezer drive out and the car not.
A lot of people been in.
Yeah, because everyone around there
would have affected it.
Yeah, like put it this way. Well, I went there 2018, and the minute I got there, yeah, like I went to Tivoli. I drove to Tivoli Gardens, but before I got there, everyone in Tivoli Garden knew I was coming, and it was like they knew who I was before I got there. And then as soon as I got out of the car, it was like, yo, I try to wait up for you, I'm way up for you. And they're telling me down to where the person was I was meeting. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's just, it's so clicky. Do you know what I mean? That had to be a setup, man. It had to be a setup.
And it wasn't a one-off thing, So, I continued to work because we continued to do.
So you stayed out there after that?
Yeah, because obviously, you're in the game and, you're still in a position that everyone wants to do business with you. And that's what I said, it's a dog-eat-dog business. So if someone goes, it just means someone's steps in because they want those contacts and they want to be close to the person who has those links.
Did you have to take on a new partner to...
Yeah, and I had several different business partners in different projects, and many of those guys had got murdered. In different scenarios, shot through the head, put in a boot of a car, set on fire, some really terrible things. And it didn't even disturb me that this was the kind of life I was involved in, and this became a normal thing. Murder, things like this was nothing. It was an occupational hazard, and that was it. Didn't look at it like that. My dream would I'd never get murdered, and you don't think like that.
No, you don't.
But
Even being in it.
Yeah, but what I did realise though, people would remove people to get closer to me as a contact. So it was a question of, it's such a dangerous game. People will do anything to succeed in what they're doing.
I suppose the good thing with you though was you was always the exit. So you was the value.
I was the connect.
Yeah, you was the value. So they're all going to iron him out. But anyone in the middle, in between.
What about people who thought they couldn't get into you? They might have killed you to screw up someone else's business who's giving in.
Because they haven't got the exit.
Yeah, they're just to screw someone else's plan.
No, they haven't got it. They had no, because look, it doesn't make sense killing him because they're not going to earn no money.
Yeah, people who aren't involved.
No, but it don't matter. But what I'm saying, they'd rather kill that person, get them out of the way, and then come to you direct. They're not going to kill the golden goose. And Jamaicans are very calculated like that. They're not into biting the nose off to spite their face because they suffer. It's not a country where everybody's living like with enough. Yeah, it's not a lavish lifestyle over there. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like hand to mouth, and the electricity, the water, everything's like controlled to a certain level that you can't just run your water and run your hot water and run your electricity and without thinking about what it's going to cost. Do you know what I mean? Because they don't just cut off your house. Do you know what I mean? They cut off the block.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When they pay, the block gets cut off. So over there, it's a different life. And I never realised how poor the country was until I went there. And that was in 2018.
22 years ago, yeah.
Do you understand? So me going over there, or 2017, one or two, but going over there, seeing it for what it is, and you go out and the money, what it costs to buy food, like McDonald's, takeaways, is the same as here.
That's
right.
But they've got no money.
It's ridiculous.
I'm thinking, how?
It's the wrong way around, isn't it?
Yeah,
Cars are much more expensive.
How can
that's
anyone?
right.
How can
I presume
anyone?
people have got the wrong misconception.
Yeah.
They think poor countries things are...
No, people incredibly rich or people incredibly poor.
And the
There
good
is
thing
no
I
middle
liked
class.
about Jamaica, mate, and there's one thing I really did like about Jamaica, 98% of the people are God-fearing, good, working people. It's only a small percentage that are really bad. I never, because I had and this is my ignorance, I had a belief that like 2% were God-fearing people and everybody else is a bad man in Jamaica. Do you know what I mean? But because this is a very close-knit community, the communities look after each other.
Yes.
So it's not like the communities are all bad, they're looking after each other, and a little element of the community that protect the larger group of the community are bad because they've got to be, really. Do you know what I mean? Because it's dog eat dog, for surviving's sake. It's not for making money's sake. It's just surviving. And that's what I thought. That's what I found when I went over there. Do you know what I mean? And it's
there are actually
crazy.
more churches in Jamaica per person than any country in the world.
Yeah, the British threw it out there, didn't they? Christianity on Jamaicans when they were over there, just chucked it and chucked it.
They did.
Yeah, it's a mad country.
And so, like I say, black just being killed, people falling like flies. You're not seeing any warning signs. You're fully involved.
Yep, and that was what I knew, you know. And then basically, it never stopped. It excelled even further. I came back to England, and I essentially based myself back in England in about just after the millennium. And then things stepped up to another level, because where we were, you know, putting products onto containers and putting them through the market with perishable goods and disguising things and doing stuff, a different door opened. The different door now was taking it somewhere else. Was approached, said, look, there's a team of customs officers that will work. Now, everyone talks about these things, but they don't really happen. But it was okay, if you guys want a container, this is the price, £1 million a box, you put whatever you want in it and we'll clear it. Well, you hear this kind of stuff all the time, but is it real, ain't it real? So I thought, okay, we'll test it. We did test it and it worked. And then that was basically the road to hell, because
once that opened,
no going back, and you can open a door and get as much as you want directly here.
And I'll tell you what, I was in jail when they first got their first chunk, right? Because I'll give Fabian, right, listen to this, right? When I got nicked, I had a lump of money. So Fabian's come up to me and he said, mate, look, let me work the money. I'll work the money for you, I'll do this, I'll do that. So I said, all right, just make sure Lisa gets, I think it was 100 quid a week. So take the money, right, and make sure she gets 100 quid a week, yeah, and then I'll get my money when I come home. So he went, yeah, sweet. And the fucking bastard come up New Year's Eve, right, and just paid the money back because they got a parcel home Christmas, yeah. And they got the part, and I was like, he was like, dropped them out, I said, hold on, you're supposed to do this till I come home, bro. What are you talking about? He was like, nah, bro, I'm on to other things now. And he called me in the fella, and then right until I got out, and I realised what had happened, I thought, that horrible. Do you know what I mean?
So that was the door that opened. And at that point then, we really thought it was invincible. It then meant we had cartels that wanted to work with us because they didn't have anything like that anywhere in the world. And it meant that basically we were in a position that whatever we could get our hands on, we could send and we could get cleared.
Oh my God.
And that was a very dangerous position to be in, because that changed the dynamics of really
everything,
what happened there. Yeah. And in retrospect, I look at it and I think, you know, I destroyed thousands of lives, thousands, if not fucking millions. Do you know what I mean? Because
definitely affected millions.
Because it was a trail of destruction which greed and stupidity.
Yeah, when you did it with this product as well,
yeah,
and not the
let me in my mind think this was going to be, you know, something that would have an effect on nobody, right? And in 2003, I think it was, 2004, December, a shipment was coming in from Guyana. A friend of mine, person who was, with us in the coup, he was making himself very busy around other people. Even though we had the customs cleared at the wharf, he'd attracted attention from another set of police. They decided to tap his phone. As a result of him talking, they then was made aware that a container was coming in that night. So they set about going to the wharf. They started to pull containers, and then eventually when they pulled uncleared containers, they thought, let's just look at some cleared ones. They pulled a box, they opened it, half a ton of cocaine fell out on them. They were then in an uncompromised situation because they either arrest all the customs at the wharf and let us go because it's corruption, or
send them through and then make the phone call,
or they approach the customs at the wharf, let them know that their game's up, but let us go through and get nicked, which is what they done. So on that night, they held the container back. They just replaced it with blocks of wood, wrapped those up, put them back in the sacks of coconuts, and let the container proceed to the market. Call came in. The container was there. Sent some people to collect the goods. They got down now. As I went headed to the market to oversee it.
Did you always used to go down to it?
I didn't trust one or two of the people because I knew what they were like, and it was a fair reason as well.
He says that, but it weren't just that, man. It's just when you're in that game, you've got to know. You've got to. I've got to see it. I've got. Do you know what I mean? It ain't just a trust. It's more of an ego as well, isn't it, man? You got to be honest. It's ego as well.
I know that people don't trust one of my friends.
No, listen. It's not about that, right? You've got the customs page. You've got everything lined up, yeah. You're going there because you feel invincible, mate. That's all it is.
Part of that as well.
It is part of that, man. It's all that world is full of ego.
Definitely.
Full of ego. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, right, the best move he could have done is sat Mr. Small Man away from everyone and let everyone else do it.
You should have stayed in Jamaica.
Yeah,
it's ego.
Everything in life is a journey. You have to get somewhere at the end of it. You have to go through a path. Had my path not been through all these places, I wouldn't have got to where I am now. I'm doing what I'm doing now,
and where we're going now is
and
much better.
And what it can do, and what it can do for people now, in a good way, not in a negative way, as I've done for the best part of 30 years. Anyway, we walked straight into it. Everyone was arrested. We were all held on remand. When I saw my lawyer, his comment to me was, I said, "How's it looking?" He said, "You've got better chance of ripping a new arsehole." He said, "You haven't got hope in hell." He said, "They've closed ranks on you and you're all going to go get 30 years. So it was one of them ones. But, there's nothing to lose now, so you're going to fight every new tooth and nail. As luck would have it, never underestimate someone's greed. The police or soccer team that were now running the case and investigating the case, they had access to something called public interest immunity documents, which meant it was intelligence of all the smuggling stuff we were doing, which they'd been building up over a period of a year.
Is that a PII?
PII, public interest immunity documents. Yeah. Anyway, there were some quite powerful ones in there. One in particular said that one of my co-defendants had £9 million in foreign currency stashed in the boot of his car. Anyway, greed was the greatest thing. The guy leading the case saw that, knew that customs had been involved and took their end from what was coming on a regular basis. An approach was made to give them £250,000 to destroy their own case. So, subsequently, arrangements were made and all the PII documents were stolen out of customs house. We managed to manoeuvre them, so I got them into the prison where I was. And I thought, it's great having them, but what the fuck am I going to do with them? So I sat down and I carefully, strategically tried to work out how they could be used. And I thought, then I can do it is I've got to take this full on and call my bluff. So I said to the others, look, you're going to melt, basically. I'll take all the cross-examination. Let me, because I've got a plan. Anyway, when I was going to give evidence, I was called into the box. So
what did your lawyer say about all this at this time?
Couldn't tell him. No, you're not allowed to tell him because you can't be aware of the documents. Because the documents now, if they become public, he can't represent me and he can't look at them because that's how it works. So I took a pile of documents with me, smuggled them into the court, put them in my jacket pocket. When I was getting cross-examined, what I'd done was I took the questions and then said, "You're a liar, I'm innocent." And he was like, So I pulled the documents out of my jacket pocket. I walked up to the jury, started giving them to the jury, walked up to the judge, threw them at the judge. Everyone started panicking. There was chaos in the court. Anyway, the judge ran into his chambers with his water bottle. The guards jumped on me. They stuffed me out of there. Jurors called out. Jury got called back in after that. They warned me, brought me back in. Anyway, first thing that happened was trying to reassemble the court, right? So as the prosecutor's gone to me, Mr. Pritchard said, "You're a liar." I said, I'm innocent. The jury then looking like this. Then the jury sent a note to the judge. What were those papers? The judge ignored those papers. They're not relevant to this. then I keep going back, referring. I said, them papers tell the truth. So then jury go back with another note to the judge. What's he talking about, those papers? He's saying he's innocent. Why can't we see the papers that he's talking about? Judge says, look, if you mention those papers again, you'll be in a holding cell with him, right? Do not mention them papers. They're not for you to see. Anyway, I kept going back and forth, wearing it down. Of course, result was the jury were getting tired. They thought they were being left out of the case and not being told things. I'm going around saying I'm innocent. And at the end of the first trial, 4 of my co-defendants got acquitted and 3 of us got hung juries. So that was it. First layer. So we got rid of the drivers, which we wanted to do. 3 of us went back for trial. We sat in prison over that Christmas. We was there for nearly 2 years on remand. Second trial came about. During the second trial now, I thought could have some big problems anyway. Someone can't say, listen, there's a reporter called Donald McIntyre. He wants to make a documentary about what's going on. Anyway, in their mind, they're thinking this guy's going to get a big lump of sentence, 30, 40 years, and that's their story, Britain's underworld. So I knew what I was planning, so I thought, let's let him do it anyway. Had him basically, a whole camera crew of them, following people around who were close to me, interviewing them, talking to them. I had a mobile phone talking to them from prison, and this whole documentary now was being made while the thing's going on. They think now they're going to get this big, drama outside the court when I get to 30 years, and that's the ending. But what I then done was I had plan number 2 in place. So I knew they were going to definitely not let me do the papers. I get thoroughly searched going in, so I had a system put in place that the papers will get put on an internet site. So then what we've done was had some pirate radio stations teed up to broadcast the website address. So when I went to court, they searched me and handcuffed me, so I couldn't do the same trick. But what I'd done to my co-defendant, give his evidence in chief, and then when they ask him to answer questions, just say I'm not answering more questions, just start spitting out the name of the website. Oh. So he'd done that anyway. The judge was like, what's he saying? It's like, Justice and Crime DK, Justice and Crime DK. That's the website with corrupt customs on it. Da, 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 da. Anyway, so said, so done. Jury, judge, called the jury. You look at that website, you're going to go to prison. Da, 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 da. Big drama. Everyone's downloading this stuff off of the thing. They got undercover police names, addresses in there. They got informants in there. All kinds of madness. So now suddenly the DEA's going mad because the intelligence DEA is Metro. They're pulling agents out of Colombia, out of South America, because the whole thing's been exposed, right? Names, details. Anyway, it was pandemonium. And the judge in the end was like, he was like, what on earth can we do? Because we've never had a ruling like this before. It's never happened in a British court ever, that defendants have got hands on public interest immunity documents, right, in trial. Anyway, we went through that whole shenanigan, and in the end, the prosecutor, he was at his wit's ends, because every time he was coming at me with questions, I was referring to the PI documents, and the jury was looking at bewildered. Anyway, he went down, and then in the final song of it, all 3 of us got acquitted. So they had the biggest drug case in British history with no one convicted. And that was that. And like any sensible thinking person at that time, I should have retired, called it a day, and come out ahead.
So I was hoping that you might have, or got straight now, then something might have gone wrong that got led back, but you just straight into it.
Had no conscience.
So is it, again, ego. The ego, like, fuck it. Like,
he was, it sounded like at that point there, everything that you were planning ended up, you managed to be able to pull off every plan.
Every single thing. Even to the degree I sat there for 18 months and I studied every single piece of paperwork, even to the degree I knew in a cross-examination come, I looked at one number I saw I'd called by accident and called the wrong digit, right? And I thought, the prosecutor's going to take this bit of paper and think I've called this person I haven't called. And I guarantee he's going to use it into the phone evidence. So when I was taking cross-examination, I see him handing out these bits of paper to the jury. Tell a lie. He said, have you spoken to Mr. Pallett? I said, no, I don't know him. Don't know him? Because in his eyes, I've called him. But I have tried to call him. I've called and made the wrong digit, right? Anyway, God, no, I don't know him. That's what for my wife. So he proudly gone with the bits of paper. I give them to the jury. So, will you please take to this number? I've gone, yep, this number. Now, can you tell me who this number is? Got the first idea. That's Mr. Howlett's number. I said, no, it ain't. So what? That's not his number. Listen, so you got him up here talking about getting me 40 years in prison if this goes wrong. I said, you haven't got the time to even look at the evidence. I said, this is what you're doing. This is a kangaroo court. I said, you're making stuff up. Anyway, he looked at the number, he pulled a bit of paper back off the jury. It was in out, it was one embarrassment after the other, after the other, after the other. Till in the end, when the jury went out for the weekend, he got up and said, look, he can't get him. This is the prosecutor. He can't get in Monday. He's got another case going on. This was his life-changing case. But the jury were actually physically at war with each other, fighting in the jury room. They were so, split. They were so split. Anyway, that was it. The thing come out, Donald's documentary now, which was going to be a big criminal documentary. He had to re-edit it, some sort of love story.
Yeah.
So basically, then it was like, what are you going to do next? And any sensible thinking person would have called it a day.
But the problem was at that point there, you're Mr. Untouchable, nothing could stick.
And the problem that day, I was incredibly bloody stupid, because then I let my ego run away with me, and as a vanity project, I was offered a book deal, and I took it, and I wanted a shenanigan of doing a film, and it was like putting a red flag to a ball. And I'd done that, and from that minute on, I'd set a target for myself on my back with the police. Every police enforcement unit wanted to be the people
so little money in
brought
books
me
as
down.
well. Like how much did you
Rubbish.
make out of it?
Vanity projects.
Yeah.
I could have took them all and burnt them. It was a vanity project.
I got told. I can't remember. It was one of my legal team. They told me that let me get it right. That you actually caused the high-ranking Metropolitan Police, a sort of a level with the high-ranking Metropolitan Police Force, to actually doubt each other. Like they set out.
I'll show you documents in there, right?
And they didn't even
where
trust each other.
They literally, and they say it to each other, we undermined what I'd done. Undermined British law enforcement, that they didn't no longer trust each other to share intelligence.
You were like an evil criminal genius at those points there.
Horrendous person, basically, to manipulate something like that.
Yeah, wow.
And that was that. And the vanity project was the book and the film, which never even happened. And that was the target on my back. And then I got a change of spirit. And the change of spirit was, I had money now, okay, because I never stopped doing what I was doing, okay. And I thought, I'm now going to go for a new life. So I bought a nice big house up in Essex and tried to, disappear from that.
Trying to do legal business, or?
Yeah. I started off with a general intention to do legal business. And then I actually got an awakening. When my son came to see me, who I hadn't seen for a number of years, because I could no longer go to America, because after the case of 2004, it lit me up. The DEA had created a document they put out, basically, it's threats to their national security. Because I wasn't convicted, they couldn't name me, but they clearly identified it was me, to try to put half a ton of cocaine into this country. And that particular document is like a blacklist.
You were top of the one
at that point. At the point, yeah, with all those agencies. And that was the mark that separated me from seeing my two sons in America. So I brought it on myself.
Yep.
That was a big wake up moment for me. For two reasons. Number one, I realised I missed so much of his life, and a lot of it had been caused by my own actions, As I said, I was named in the Global Intelligence Report, which the DEA publish, and the crime agencies, of threats to their countries. Directly I was named in that, and that barred me from going to the States and other countries. Don't need to do that. The whole basis of a report like that, what it meant was, years later I realised soccer also contributes to that. And people who go to certain countries like Afghanistan or terrorist countries where Americans have troops on the ground, have not have the right, but they will physically take you out with a drone. So had I travelled to any of those war-torn countries, not that I would have been there, but had I, they would have had the right to actually kill me. And that was a real wake-up call. What was it for? For nonsense. But the most important thing was the separation of my family, you know, the time I'd lost with my children, all my children, and, you know, it woke me up to a lot of things.
So you say it was a awakening moment. Did that change the course you were living? Because you said obviously you came out, you hadn't really learnt your lesson, and you were still dibbling dabbling. And so when you started coming, did it allow you to change, or did it start a process of change at that point?
Yes, it was a wake-up call, and I tried to change. Over the years, doing what I've done was one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, I was an incredibly successful event promoter, probably one of the most successful urban music promoters in this country, and I had amazing contacts across all fields. So I decided I was going to go back into that arena because I knew it. I felt comfortable as a safety blanket, and I set up a company called Urban Arts Entertainment. We promoted events, monthly events at Hammersmith Apollo, places like that. We brought in artists from America, you know, top selling R&B artists, hip hop artists, so on and so forth. Busta Rhymes, Joe, Genuine, Next,
top level ones,
SWV, endless list. Drew Hill. You know, this is the industry I work in. This is what I do. And I also had a great affiliation with professional footballers in the Premiership. A very close friend of mine, he works as an agent, and we decided it was a great opportunity to bring the world of football to the world of entertainment. And what we'd done was had after parties at the events, and we would have numerous Premiership players coming to the events, and that was used as a crossover to venture into other business, you know. We had a particular artist, God rest his soul, Paul Carslake, whose sister is Jo Woods, who was married to Ronnie Woods, the Rolling Stone guitarist. I was able to manage him as an agent, and he exhibited some of his art at our events, where professional footballers then could, you know, buy, you know, specialist pieces of art and so on and so forth. So I moved across the border and I registered other business. You know, I had We Collect Your Car, which is a car company. I had Frank Bruno, who was the head face of that business, where we would pick up cars from auction for people, deliver them to their door. People could go out on a night out. We could then have someone arrive there with a collapsible scooter, and they could actually drive their vehicle home for them, with them in the car, things like that. So that again was another business. I had Tailor Made Homes, which is a property development company. Jeez. And Almost Legal Media, which is a billboard advertising company. So I had numerous legitimate businesses. So all intention and purposes on the outside, I was extremely successful as a legitimate businessman. But unfortunately, you know, the poison of smuggling had stayed in my blood. And that was my biggest downfall, because we tell ourselves that, you know, we're smart and how clever we are, we're always 2 steps ahead, but we're actually 2 steps behind, you know. And inevitably, sooner or later, I, you know, flew too close to the wind, and I got sucked into something which was waiting for me, because I couldn't have done all I'd done and realistically expect to get away with it. It was never going to happen like that, you know. There was the biggest trial of drug seizure in this country. Over £100 million worth of drugs is what BBC News reported out in Customs and Excise. You know, we walked off of that, you know, and then to walk away in the sunset, there was always going to be that hanging over my head, you know. It's like a sword of Damocles. And, and what led eventually to my downfall. And
so you sound like, obviously at the point why you carried on doing stuff when you had all these successful businesses, you literally felt like you're untouchable, nothing could stop you at that point. You would beat anyone, whether it's the services.
It became to the stage where, to be honest with you, I wanted to do good. I wanted to change. You know, I had, as I said, various businesses. I, you know, had an investment in a you know, a Tudor star restaurant in the Docklands. and I had a wide spectrum of business, and I wanted to do something to give something back. So I found a building in Southend-on-Sea, and it was an industrial building, and I converted it to a green screen film studio with a restaurant, with a recording studio, with editing facilities, with a complete rehabilitation, space. I had 24-seat boardroom. It was a business, a real business. And in the midst of all this, where I should have switched off and said to myself, it's a business, it has to be kept professional, I allowed the negative people, or some of the negative people from my past, to be under that shelter. And once you do that, we think that we owe everyone a duty, the old Powers Act. And that was the first mistake I made, because what was a great, incredible business and a credible vision before its time, I allowed
tarnished it with
to tarnish it. I tarnished it.
And so what could have avoided you obviously going down those ways at that point there? Well, there was no stopping you, obviously, after you'd beaten that one court case, your ego just inflated to the point of...
Of course it was, because for one thing with criminals is we say we haven't got egos, but we have got egos. That's the biggest driving force we have. And the reality is, when we realise in life, the people that are praising you are the ones that are making money from you, but not making money from you. The ones that are praising you are the ones that want to see your downfall. It's like a wave and a smile on one side, and a knife and a dagger in the other. And that's the reality of that business. So you've always got to understand it's the nature of that beast. Now, moving through, as I said, I had everything I wanted. Most people wouldn't want it. I had no concern for money. Everything I owned. I've never rented a house. I've always owned a house. I've never rented a car. I always owned a car. Whatever I've had all my life, I've owned. It's mine. And that was the principle. I was in a great situation, in a great place, but boredom, stupidity, we allow things to seep in. And in my case, it was a case of, had I left it and continued on the path that I tried to set up on, I would have been in a different position, but I didn't. Stupidly I allowed someone in, and the further that whole negative circle grew around me, it was leading to something different, and eventually it led to a position that cost me my liberty. I was, doing what I do. Inevitably, I was asked, could I assist a situation? I didn't want to assist a situation originally. The person I described as a friend at the time, he fell into some trouble with some people. He owed them a severe debt of money. The debt presumably was drugs. I didn't want to get involved in the drug game again. I'd had a break from it. I had money. I lent him £50,000 to ease his debt. However, he never paid who he had to pay, and he, as a result of it, had a mechanism that he was literally going around getting people arrested. And I was just a person, at the end of the day, who was going to be top of that food chain. But I blame it on myself, because at the end of the day, I had no reason to go where I went, or to do what I'd done, and I should have known better. And it came with what led me to a 15-year sentence.
Would you have said it had partly... Would you say that because ego, would you say ego and greed are one of the same, or would you separate ego and greed, or do you think he was greedy?
I think it was both. I think it was three things: combination of ego, greed, and stupidity.
Yeah, because I was very egotistical as a kid, but I always knew I ain't gonna do that. If I do that, this is gonna happen, or that's gonna fall. And like for gamblers, I never gambled, right? I wouldn't gamble because I knew there's a high risk of losing. So no matter what you told me, I wouldn't believe it, because I know gambling's a losing trade, because my ego wouldn't allow me to lose that money. But greedy people gamble all the time because of that greed. It isn't ego when it comes to greed. And that's why I was just listening to him thinking, wow, do you know what? that you might have the bug. Because I call it the bug. I don't call it weed, I just call it the bug. Because I've been involved with crime my whole life, and I've seen people with a bug. Like I've given people £200,000, and the next day I hear them borrowing money off someone. And I think, but you had money yesterday. I'll give you 200 quid. And like, I'm not talking £200, I'm talking £200,000. Do you understand? Like, I've gone to work and we've made money and we've had the bust up, and the next day or two I heard them on the phone borrowing money. And they're people I stayed away from, you know, and sometimes a lot of people get that quality sort of confused with ego, you know, but that's an illness, I think.
I think what it is, in fact, I know it's addiction, okay?
An illness.
Now, you can be addicted to anything. It can be drugs, it could be sex, it could be anything. And smuggling and crime is an addiction, okay? The better you are at it, or you think you are at it, and the more you succeed at it, the more you become addicted to it, okay? And that is the most fatal thing, because that will lead to your inevitable downfall. And walking out of that case in 2006, I did feel invincible. And I thought, no matter what it is, I'm smarter than any criminal. I'm smarter than the system. And there's nothing I cannot beat. Because I was at the belly of the beast and came out of that. However, my mother had an old saying, puss and dog don't get the same luck. Okay? In other words, because you're lucky that day doesn't necessarily mean another day is going to give you the same luck. But our minds and our ego, as you said, tells us that we cannot be stopped. It tells us that it can't happen to us. And that's the downfall. You know, we're not practical or sensible thinking people. Because if you were a business person, you would look at everything, you'd assess risk, okay? And you could take a calculated risk, but you look at every single figure and every single fact, then you make an assessment. And as a criminal, I used to make assessments that, you know, generally I could put lots of buffers in the way, you know, and there's an old saying, why buy a dog and bark? Okay, you wouldn't.
Say, because you never ever had it with
right?
me.
Wouldn't.
Never ever had it with me.
Wouldn't. You wouldn't buy a dog and bark yourself. So you could have 10, 20 buffers in the way. If you were capable of doing that, you could do that. And that would be an insulation for many things. But when you become so egotistic, you remove all the buffers because you think to yourself, I could do that myself, and I'm going to do that. I want to go back to where I started 30 years ago, and I'm going to go do it because I feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Okay? So when your mind gets so messed up like that, okay, and when that's how you start to think, then you know you've got a serious problem, you know?
Yeah, so you talk about obviously trying to help the friend out. Obviously there are some sympathy there. Obviously you weren't trying to do it for any monetary sort of gain. Was it as much to do with your ego, maybe a bit of a God complex, like you can help every situation, you can save every situation?
Of course it's a God complex. Any criminal that turns around and says they do things, we do things because we enjoy doing things, we enjoy things because it gives us power. Yeah. It means we have to power other people. And it was all about power, if I must be honest to you, you know, and you can only look back at it from a reflection state of mind, and actually it takes time to look back and reflect and accept that and say that, you know. And at the time, you don't know why you do it, but it is power. That's all it is. You know, having the power over people, you know, and having the power over situations, you know. And it's not a normal way to live, you know. Normal people, you know, don't operate like that. But criminals, for some reason, we think that's all that life is about. And it ruins relationships because it has a toxic behaviour, you know, in a personal relationship with your wife or your children even, you know, because you become this person who is the all-powerful, the almighty, and you can become very, you know, self-judgmental on people. You can, you know, think you can just, you know, literally do whatever you want and just don't give any regard for anybody else. And yeah, so you give a few, you know, you give something out, it's having the power to say, I can do that.
Yes.
I can just do that. You know,
well, that changed somewhere though, didn't it?
It changed. You know where it changed? It changed when I went to prison. It changed when I realised at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to. And what it comes down to is looking, and more so when I was in Whitemore, you know, and I looked and I could, well, earlier than that actually, when I was at Belmarsh, I started to change in terms of I started to feel conscious about things and look at the destruction and devastation I'd caused, my actions leading up to that over the best part of 30 years. And, you know, I looked at all guys who were in there doing life sentences who had, you know, been rubbing out people because it was all about a little bit of territory, all about a little bit of disrespect, and generally speaking, all boiled down to drugs. And that was my first state of consciousness. And what even state of consciousness is one thing, was watching their young girlfriends with their young children coming in to visit them. And in my mind, I know that those young girlfriends in 5 years after they've talked about the appeal, which never happened, and after they, you know, carry on that string, and then suddenly they realise that, you know, they've got to move on with their lives, that they young guys aren't looking at, you know. Secondly, when you see older parents coming in to visit those people, or writing to older parents, and you know and I know, you're never coming out to see those people again. You know, and you look at these consequences which you don't look at when you get into trouble or when you're going to do something, but these are inevitable situations which will happen. You know, forget about all the practical ones, getting a massive sentence and getting spread to the other side of hell, do you know what I mean, and getting all your assets stripped from you and all the other stuff that goes with that. That's just one thing, and that's the consequence. That's the consequence of our lifestyle. If you can't deal with that, you shouldn't be involved in crime. That's as simple as that.
That's it.
But the other side of it is a cruel side. You know, it's the people you affect, the innocent parties, not just your victims, but your family, your friends, people that actually care about you. These are the ones that hurt the most.
What I was going to say to you, right? I never ever thought I'd be legitimate. I never ever believed 7 years ago that I'd be in a position I'm in today, right? And it weren't until after I got shot and I was at rock bottom and I realised that none of my so-called friends loved me, right? And I'd wasted my life and I'd done certain things. So I got to a point with a proper like slap in the face, right? And then why I say that is because everybody's got to get to a point. And I brought up to you, I think it was around your mum's funeral.
Yeah.
And I said to you, remember, I said, was it the pain that you caused your mum that made you want to change your direction ultimately? Do you know what I'm saying? Because we have moments where we think, oh, I'm out of order. But deep down, I'll say, for me, I say, fuck it, it's just part and parcel. Do you know what I'm saying? But there was a point in my life where I thought, wow, do you know what? I've actually wasted my life. And I've ruined my kids, I've ruined my missus, I've ruined my mum, I've ruined everybody for these people. Do you know what I'm saying, Chuck? So did you get to that point around your mum's illness, like you just thought, like, I've got to do something for my mum to make my mum feel better because I've just hurt my mum. Like, my mum was a law-abiding, upstanding member of the community in the country, not just in London. Like, Jamaican people followed his mum throughout the country. Do you understand? So when I asked him at the funeral, was like, "Are you doing this for your mum?" And when he said to me, "You know what, I am," that's when I knew as a man that he had changed. Now, if he'd have said to me on that day, "No, I'm doing it for myself," I would have thought, he ain't changed. Because in that situation, when I asked him the question, and I'll be honest with you, because you're my pal, right? Yeah. I asked him that question for that reason. Yeah. Because, like I said to Andrew when I first come around him, I said, "Look, my hands are 100% clean, and everybody around me has got to be 100% clean." And that's why I asked that specific question. And when I asked me, you know, when you see someone talk well up, when they're thinking about the pain they've caused and what they could do better, and they wish I wish I had more time with my dad after what I've alienated my dad, and because his mum was dying, that's why I asked the question then, and he was like, yeah, that was it. And now I want to make it better so they can die at peace. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to start having it with him now.
He's hit the nail on the head, you know, if the truth be known, because when it came down on me was the reality. One day I remember phoning the house to speak to my sister, and my mum had answered the phone. I went to prison, and she was just, you know, of sane mind. and a sound body. And I remember she answered the phone to me, and she thought she was speaking to her dead brother. At that time, dementia obviously had kicked in. My sister was trying to tell me that there was problems and there were issues, but I heard it for myself. And I was there. You know to go, you're in there, and no hope at the end of the tunnel, and you know that every probability this woman's going to die while I'm in prison. But not only that, the suffering that she's going to go through, because that's what took her over the edge. I've got no doubt in my mind. That's what took my mum and put her in her grave, as it did my dad, you know. And that's to do that to great people. To do it to anyone's terrible, but these people were great. These people were giants. And to say I had done great things in my life, I just stand on their shoulders. That's why it's been easy for me to do. You know, it's not me. I think for 1 minute, I think all the great achievements that supposedly I've made are because it's me. It's them in me that's made that happen.
And their networks as well, isn't it?
Come on, it's of course it's their network. These are respected people.
Yeah.
That, you know, the favour they could ask, if they asked anything of anyone, it would be accepted. Nothing will be refused. As dear child, you know. So at the end of the day, the price they paid for what I had done was not, they didn't warrant that, you know, because it came to them, the shame, the embarrassment, and that was the turning block. Yeah, you're right. And I knew about that time I had to do something in my life and really do it and stick to it, that in their name that I could feel proud of one day and say, well, look, some of the devastation, destruction that I had caused on the communities and the things they tried to build and raise up, I could try to start to repair. And I don't kid myself, it would be the hardest task and the hardest job or the toughest business I could ever dream about doing, because it's something that, how could I even turn around and say, after I've been on that road for so many years, tell someone to rehabilitate or change, because there are so many different crossroads along that path. But in my eyes, I've gone past all those crossroads, so maybe I might be the person that can answer those questions when you reach those points in your life. And it was early stages at Belmarsh that I saw what was going on with the gangs, and you know, I thought there's something we could do here. The one postcode program was born out of that. That was successful, it worked. I put my mind carefully into other courses and looked at the problems in prisons. And every problem I looked at was so simple. It was just a solution to a problem. And it was like, why are there so many drug addicts in prison? And I'm saying to myself, why are people going to prison and having a problem with drugs? They're going in not on with drug habits, they're coming out with drug habits. And, you know, you walk on a wing and you just tell yourself, well, it's common sense. You know, if you've got guys coming in who have got drug problem, you put them, segregate them, put them in a certain part of prison, put them in a very expensive 12-week, you know, course to get them cleaned up. Then you've got a prison wing full of guys who are in there for selling drugs with not one course to address their behaviour. Not one course. So the solution to that problem is really simple. You create a course that fixes that. And what do? You look at those elements. What does a drug dealer do? Why do you do it? You're an entrepreneur. You're selling drugs. You don't work for anyone else. You want to work for yourself. Yeah. So if you adapt business to those principles, and I've had very successful businesses over the years, you know, you can give someone hope. Yep. Whether they stick to it or not, you don't know. But the reality is, you give them an opportunity to show them this is what you can do, it just might change people's lives. So that was my introduction to really be serious and take this thing serious. And, you know, I have. And I've stayed that steady course since. I've had amazing people who I've known from the legitimate world, people from celebrities to executives of major corporate companies who have all come out and showed their support, you know, and put their name on the line as well for me. And that's a big thing. It's not a little thing, you know, because I never forget one day when I was going back through the sentence, and I came out of Spursville, went into Wandsworth, and the gym officer, my cellmate, Rob, he saw the gym officer and said, oh, Gov, Pritchard's back. Do you know he's doing a rehabilitation thing now? And the officer said, oh, is that his new cover? Because no one would believe this is true. No one's going to believe it. No one's going to believe it, right? You know, and I had it. It was time and time again. You know, I was doing courses, and you know, they've literally been called into an office by the security. Say, listen, we know what you're up to, and it's like, sorry, you're trying to create your own gang. That's what you're doing. I'm like, what? They said, all this is, we don't believe anything you're doing. We know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get power. I'm thinking, when they feel so resentful towards you and they feel that, you know, it's impossible for you to change, that's what really spurs me on to change. Because you've now created a challenge for me. Do you know what I mean? And as I said, this one is an ego. This one's actually about putting something back. And as Marvin's rightfully said, about at least knowing I've put back something in society. What my parents, as those people, you know, as community leaders, would have wanted me to have done from the offset. But had I known this, I could have done this 30 years ago and saved everyone a lot of time and a lot of money and, you know,
of course, because there's a couple of things, obviously. Anyone who's aspiring to be a criminal, you're never going to touch the heights that these two did within the criminal ranks. And yet your family still suffered massively through it. And when you look at it now, obviously down the line, it's such a selfish way to live if you've got family, isn't it? And there's another thing that you said, because you two both seem like sensible guys, but when you get into that world, you kid yourself into thinking you're making sensible decisions.
Listen,
and it's just,
a businessman would never touch this. The decisions we make would have said, don't get me wrong, businessmen do it. But they do it with a dozen buffers in a way, as I said. And they do it as a business. And it's nothing personal. But the minute you're coming from actually doing it and climbing through that ladder, you've still got the mentality. And that's the mentality that put me on that market that night.
yes.
Okay, that mentality took me there that night. Okay? Otherwise, I would have been sitting down free. Everyone else would have been nicked. That would have been it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it's the mentality of, fuck it.
It's always that limbic system.
I'm going over there.
It's always that famous last words.
It's what it is. If you can't do it, I fucking will.
It's a terrible switch, isn't it? That fucking one.
That's what it is.
There's nothing earlier, because remember a few years ago, obviously when I was still messing around in certain things, obviously tiny little level, I saw my friends wanted to go in a bookie. I said, why are you going in a bookie to lose your money? He goes, I work a 9 to 5. I'm going to have a look. He goes, you gamble your life every day. And it didn't clock to me. And then at that moment there, and you said earlier, you didn't used to gamble, but criminals happily risk their neck every single day.
Every single day.
And like I like to say,
your life,
we risk our liberty every single day for a price we can't put our finger on.
Yeah, that's right.
To stab, shoot and kill and go to prison for 5, 10, 15 years or ever. But yet we look in the mirror and call ourselves sensible.
It's the most stupidest thing there is.
When you look back with hindsight,
The stupidest thing there is. Most stupidest thing there is.
And
you know,
everyone likes to blame their environment and blame their life, their situation, but it's just I believe it was laziness for me. I was lazy. I wanted a quick buck. I wanted to cut corners, and I wanted it instantly. And with that, I had the consequences and retribution of what I've been through. And because I'm accountable for who I am and what I've been through, I can actually hold my hands up. And that's why my transition weren't difficult, because I chose to go to prison. I chose to get stabbed. I chose to get shot. I didn't have to put that fear into people, knowing this cunt's going to have to shoot me if it goes pear-shaped. These cunts are going to have to kill me if that goes wrong. But I said, fuck it, because I'm so bad, I'm so fearless, I don't care. And when it happened, I thought, oh, I'm lucky to be alive.
Lucky to be alive. That's right. Miracle to even sitting out.
So just touching on consequences there of the life. Do you guys believe in karma?
100%. Of course you get karma.
You are your karma.
You are your karma. You bring it yourself and you put it back.
Yeah.
And you try to put it back in. That's what you try to do. You try to actually balance things out, you know.
Equilibriumise.
So in the end, the world sort of balanced itself out. Obviously, you might have inflicted a lot of damage at times, and then you end up getting badly. You end up going to jail. You end up spending a lot of time.
Like I've said before, right? Everywhere I've been shot is every investigation I've been under. So I've been shot in my legs, my testicles, my arm, my head, and my eye, and I've been under investigation 4 different occasions where people have been shot in their legs, people have been shot through their arms, people have been shot in the head, people have been shot in the face, people have been shot in the testicles. My son, my eldest son, has a birthmark everywhere I've been shot.
It's amazing.
I mean, I'm going to show the photos of his birthmark, and he's got a birthmark right here. It's mad, isn't it? He's got a birthmark right here. He's got a birthmark on his head, he's got a birthmark on his arm, he's got a birthmark on his willing, he's got a birthmark on his neck. And he was the one who pointed it out to me. So I'm a great believer in karma. I just weren't looking for the signs growing up. I was too egotistical, and I was consumed with that criminal insanity of acceptance, want and need, you know, and that's the bug that everyone has. And then on top of that, you've got people that are greedy as well. So a combination of all of that is terrible. A piece of a bit of that is terrible. Like if you've got all of that, it's just insanity.
And the thing with, listen, my journey into crime was one that, and this is what makes it even worse. You know, I can't turn around and say my dad beat me, or my mum wasn't there for me, or, you know, I grew up and I was, you know, having to steal out of dustbins to eat food. No, none of that. I chose to do what I'd done. I'd done it by design. Which, what does that make me? That's the worst person you could probably get on the face of this earth, because I calculated and knew what I was doing and went and done it relentlessly every single day. And that is the real biggest thing, because I think, had I not done that, and I took my mind to any of the other opportunities I did have.
Well, look at the opportunities you did have in the legitimate world. Look how far they went.
And look what I would have.
I mean,
you know.
Like,
so when you balance that
crazy.
out, when you balance that
when
out,
you look back with,
you know,
retrospective
insight,
you look and he's me pal,
yeah.
But it is pathetic. What he accepted.
Beyond.
The same way I look at my life now, thinking, if I got all that energy into a legitimate business, I'll be like my mate Nick Gold, and I'll be a multi-millionaire, right? Living in £1 million houses. But we chose this life, like, in respects to what he could have had. I mean, he's still comfortable now because of the legitimate side of his mum and his dad, and what they created for the family, right? But in comparison to what he had for a criminal, in comparison to what he would have had if he'd have got, just focus on all the legitimate businesses that he created from 20 years of age. Right? Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Like 20 years, not 35, 40, 20 years of age, he was nicking millions.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And if all that energy got put into a legitimate product, then where would he be now?
Yeah.
Right? He wouldn't have assets what he's got now.
Yeah.
He'd own the whole streets in this manner. He'd have palaces everywhere. Do you understand what I'm saying? Look what he's got now from the mistakes he's made, and then you can sort of multiply that tenfold, right? And you won't be 20% close to where he would have been legitimately.
Yeah.
Because I look at people now that have never had a fight, never been punched, never broken a law, and they've got 5 to 6 to 800 million pounds, right? And they've just worked hard. So imagine him putting all that energy and focus, into legitimate products 30 years ago. It's crazy.
And there are hard-working criminals out there, but so misguided because all that hard work gets nowhere.
All you can do as a criminal is work hard, because you've got to work hard to achieve. You've got to be faster, quicker, and smarter than every other criminal in your lane. Otherwise, you're behind everybody, and every criminal wants to be the one in front. So if you want to be in front, you've got to work twice as hard as everybody. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you're going to fail anyway, although you're failing miserably in that choice-making process. Do you understand? So now this is what I do, what I'm doing, because I know I wasted my life, and I'm glad that Andrew made the transition he did, because it helps catapult my message, because now I have one of the biggest drug importers in this country side by side. Who's got that? Do you know what I mean? I was everything but that. I was everything up to that. Do you know what I'm saying? So together, our network just covers the whole criminal spectrum. Do you know what I mean? From working class drug addict mothers, drug dealing dads, up to drug baron kingpins. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the whole spectrum: thieving, robbery, burglary, armed robbery, kidnapping, murder, attempted murder, conspiracy murder, importation, bam. Do you know what I mean? It's just mad. And that's the beautiful thing about our relationship.
Yeah.
And the fact that the most traumatic situations in our lives has put us where we are today.
But the greatest thing that stands is hindsight. Being able to actually look back and actually understand it for what it is.
Or own it.
You know?
Own it.
And own
it's
it.
about owning
and you know, the thing, as he's rightfully said, what is a successful criminal? You know?
Oxymoron there.
By any scenario, by any shape or form, I would have been classified as an incredibly successful criminal. And the first thing you learn is that's the worst thing you can be. You know why? If you're a successful criminal, Every other criminal wants to see your downfall.
Yeah. And
It's not a united business. You got it. It's not a case of everyone supporting each other. So all these delusions that people have, this is a dog-eat-dog business.
Dog.
So, talking about hindsight and a couple of things, are you at the stage now where, you know, the last brush law, when you end up going inside and end up turning your life around? Are you pleased that happened? Obviously, not the jail time or the suffering, but did that need to happen?
It had to happen.
The person you are today?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
And without that, what happened if you hadn't?
Because if it hadn't happened, okay, it would be that continuous cycle. But forget about me going to prison. Let me tell you the biggest fear I have now, looking back in hindsight. If I instilled that into my youngest son and I let him think that it was right to live like that, what would happen then? He would have followed in my footsteps.
Yeah, be a bigger version of what you were.
Okay, and what parent on the face of this earth would want that for their child? Scumbag. And that's the reality. So me going to prison and getting caught at that stage was probably a blessing. Not a blessing that it brought my parents into a grave before their time. Not a blessing that, you know, I saw my eldest son mother. I didn't see her. She died of cancer when I was in prison. All the other things that happened, you know, around me, you know, that I saw, you know, my fiancée have to suffer. Do you know what I mean? Drag herself up to the prison to visit me. All these things happen, you know. Big, massive, beautiful house being taken away from the police. All public displayed, you know, and I look at it and think to myself, you know, that was inevitable. That was going to happen at some point. And if it hadn't happened, the next generation would have went down suffering that lane.
And like you say, you fully take responsibility for everything happened now. You don't blame the guy that obviously stitched
How can you blame? Listen,
I
can't listen. We have to blame ourselves because we're stupid. Okay, that's the reality of it. And if we go around and it's just he said, she said, and I feel sorry for me, poor me, that's a load of bollocks. Okay, we step into what we step into, we get ourselves nicked. That's the reality of it. Okay, and we pay the price for that, and that's what it is. And once you step into that game, that's what you got to understand. There are consequences, and the consequences you will have to just deal with them. You know, and why would you make a choice like that from the word get-go? If you're a sensible thinking person, why would you do it? You know?
It's, seems like insanity.
It is insanity.
It is.
Repeating the same act over and over again, expecting a different
That's
result.
right, Einstein's definition of sanity, yeah. Completely.
That's it.
Completely. You know? But thank God it's in a good place now, and the only signal and message look forward to the future, the message I'll send.
And like I said, to me, guys like you two are the best people to be telling the story, touching it early. You are the best. People are not going to touch the heights that you did. It's not going to happen, either of you. And look what happened. Well, look what it amounted to in the end.
Listen, it could have, believe me, we could both be sitting in a prison cell where we could end up dying. That could be one version of events.
Well, I've got a few of my mates like
both
yourself.
be sitting, laying in the gutter dead. That's where it could be finished.
Well, I was there.
All these places, there's so many other options. So I'm sitting here right now talking to yous. Is a great place to be.
Absolutely. So you're talking about something actually really clicked. It sunk in at this point during the prison sentence, on the last one. And then, talk about the journey from in there. Did you start taking steps while you were inside this time, trying to set out what you were going to do when you...
Well, basically, when I was inside, it was experiencing something different. As I said, prison had changed, and it's changed rapidly. The prison was populated by younger people. Sentences had become far more severe. And the dynamic of a prison was no longer as it used to be. And, you know, I looked at it and thought to myself, this isn't a place.
So in terms of what? Sorry to pause you there, but the dynamic wasn't what it used to be. What did they used to be like opposed to today?
So different prisons, basically, you would have different... they were made up different groups, okay? And you used to have old school criminals. That was something that used to exist in the prison system, where you had groups of guys, firms from certain parts of London, or united as London if you were sent to a dispersed prison up north, and that would be a firm effectively. And prisoners had lots of different levels of respect for each other. You know, things wouldn't happen. You know, in the smaller prisons, people stealing out of someone's cell, petty things like this, all massive no-nos. All, paedophile rapists on the wing. These things didn't exist in old school prison.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay,
where you're trying to
it
come
is
from.
right. That doesn't exist anymore in prisons. Prisons just a massive. It's a massive haven of confusion, and there are no thing as loyalty in prison.
No, it's
towards
the worst
inmate
of the worst.
or uniting, and people that are looking for friends in prison. Don't look for them. That's the worst place to look. If you want to find friends, go to some sort of legitimate business environment. You don't want to be drawing your friends out of prison. And people go to prison thinking this is where they're going to unite with all their mates. But prison, as I said, it's changed so rapidly. It was complete chaos. To every single level. And I kind of start to even go to the elements of it. Everyone is just it's a bitter, horrible, twisted place. There's no unifying. If someone wins a case, there's no, united behind it. Everyone wants to see everyone's downfall. It's like a barrel of crabs, everyone pulling each other down. And you think to yourself, this is not a place that you want to be sitting for the rest of your life amongst its environment. Because if you're not bitter then, you'll be bitter by the time you come out of there. And there's no way out of that. No way out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand like what you touched on when Marvin said before in the past 20, 30 years ago, used to be proper criminals. Everyone used to have certain trades, stuff like this. I had a little brush and I ended up going away for a few months, and then I was in there after a few days and I thought I'd be meeting loads of old school gangs and stuff like this, and it was just all drug addicts.
But that's the thing, right? So the whole prison system now is just made up of the failing aspects of society that have just clawed at the sort of apron strings of success to become something. And because everybody's fell by victim to drink, drugs and sort of trauma, it's just a cesspit of mental deprivation of insanity. Yeah. So everyone in there is just going round and round in a circle, convincing themselves of a load of nonsense. And it was after Andrew got out and made the conscious decision to change due to his mum's illness, is what really made him stand out in my books to work alongside to move forward with the AP Foundation and everything he's doing now. Do you understand? Because to me, that's what's important, and where we're going is what we've got to start exploring, discussing and sort of communicating, because we can sit here talking about prison stories all day long, prison mentality, the change in prison, but it's about what we can do to offer assistance, guidance and support to get people where we are today to achieve a better lifestyle and a better outcome for them, their kids and their great-grandkids,
See, the prison system isn't too far from a mental asylum at the moment.
But that's all
many
it is,
people in prison who have got mental illness, haven't been diagnosed properly. Everyone's thrown into one big, massive pot, and that's it. There's no rehabilitation, if we're honest, because it's lack of knowledge. And when I see what it is, I think to myself, a young person goes into prison, even for a misdemeanor. By the time they come out, okay, if it's a short or long sentence, they're going to excel to a different level of crime because they haven't been able to address what they should have been able to address. There's no real understanding where they're going to go there and they're going to, have someone talk to them who's in prison and telling them, look, this is a waste of time, this is a waste of life, because everyone's ego is telling them,
you don't hear it now.
Don't hear it. Step up, step up. So as ex-offenders, we have to be able to do that. We've got to go back into prisons, go back into the community and say, listen, everything's a lie. It's all a load of bollocks. You've believed it. You thought it was so great. And, you're following this pattern. Well, guess what? Anything you could possibly want to become, anything you possibly think you could imagine, whatever you possibly think you could get, I've had it. And it all amounts to
So if a young kid come out of prison today and he come to you and said, Andrew, help me out, what is it you'd be able to offer him?
I'd do it every single day, Merv. The first thing I'll turn around and say to anybody, first, you help yourself, okay? And how you help yourself is if your mindset's right and you want to change, let's try to create a path to goal to take you to that path, okay? And the thing was this, my parents used to do it. My parents used to go to the, and this is the kind of people they were. My father was an incredible bricklayer. He was a master builder. And my parents would actually get kids who, were in the home, and my dad would actually teach them how to lay bricks. All right, we wanted to give them a trade, put a trade in their hands. You know, labourers on the site. That's what he would do. And there's 3 or 4, you know, guys I remember when I was growing up with, who were my dad's labourers that now own massive building companies, because my dad put a trade in their hands and taught them, look, going to teach you a trade.
You didn't give them the fish, you taught them.
I could have a trade. You know, he wanted me to have a trade, and I would have probably had a massive building company, and it's a fact. But I chose to laugh in his face, okay, and not look at a trade that 3 generations before him had all passed on to each other, and go on my path, which I thought was my route to go. And result is I'm sitting here talking to you, not about success, but about failure.
Yeah.
Because that's what you are. You go to prison, and you're in prison. You're not there to talk how great you are, how many millions you've got, or how many tons of coke you've imported. You're there because you're a bloody failure. Because if you were that clever, you wouldn't be in prison. You know, and that's what people got to realise.
It's just a failing system.
It's just a failing system. The quicker you come to terms with it and you acknowledge it, you know, as I said, it's just and it's a revolving door.
Revolving door to nowhere. And that's what we've got to sort of make all the youngsters aware of now. That's why we're creating programs, training facilities, and exits to employment. You know, so
by doing this sort of stuff, obviously you guys are just trying to right the wrongs. Obviously your past. Obviously you've led a lot of people probably down the wrong road, and then obviously if you could lead a load of people down the right road now.
If you can change one life, just change one.
Well, we succeeded. We've done that already.
Just one, you've succeeded.
We've done that. We've done loads of lives. So that's why we've got to focus on where we're going now and how we're going to do it.
It's time to start giving something back.
I'm getting in business review, and if I mess up, someone's going to come round my gaff and shoot me, and I'll say, yeah, go on, I give it.